Hello, my name is Mike, and welcome to my build video for the DivKid Mutes Eurorack module by Befaco. I did not realize that this was a Befaco module when I bought it, so that's cool. The background music you hear in this video was made using the Mutes module. If you find this video useful, informative, or entertaining, please consider liking and subscribing. My videos are not sponsored. I buy these kits with my own money, so I'm free to give my honest reaction to the build and the module itself. The kit includes a card with a QR code to take you to the instructions online. It looks like Befaco no longer includes paper instructions with their kits. The Mutes module is easy enough to follow along with the online instructions, but for a more complicated build, it's a good idea to print out the instructions so you can use them as a checklist as you sort and solder the components. This kit has SMD components already soldered to the board. We'll need to watch out for those as we don't want to touch them with the soldering iron and desolder any of them. I decided to separate the boards first. I ended up needing a pliers to bend the excess parts off. I needed wire cutters to remove the little nubs. I didn't want to leave them as that can make the module too wide to mount in the case properly. First, we start off with the Vactrols. There is one white dot on each Vactrol that marks the leg that goes into the hole marked negative on the PCB. As you can see, I have a hard time getting all four legs in their holes. The two legs on one side are short, and the other two legs are really long. I need pliers to pull everything through. You'll see me try placing the long legs first, but I think short legs first ends up being the better choice. I'm not at all familiar with Vactrols, so out of an abundance of caution, I treat them like diodes or transistors and do one leg on each Vactrol at a time so as not to accidentally overheat them. I'm not satisfied with the appearance of the solder on the other side, so I do some touch-ups. I may have been overly cautious about not overheating the Vactrols during my first pass. Now we're adding the pin header sockets that connect the main PCB to the control PCB. I like to solder two of the corner pins that are opposite each other and then check to make sure everything's sitting flush with the board before I continue soldering the rest of the pins. I'm visualizing what the two boards will look like when combined so I can get a better idea of how the power pin header should be oriented. This power pin header tucks in between the two boards with the pins facing downward. Now we're moving on to the control PCB. First, we solder the pin headers that connect the control PCB to the main PCB. I like to plug them into the sockets when I solder them so that I guarantee that they are aligned correctly. Be cautious when attempting this and make sure you don't use too much solder or overheat and melt the plastic. You don't want to ruin the headers or permanently fuse them together. Now that the pins are soldered in place, we pull apart the two boards. Next up, we place the metal spacers that enforce a minimum distance between the boards. I use pliers to make sure the nuts are tight. Now we place the front panel components, LEDs, jacks, and switches, but we do not solder anything. The PCB does not have a negative symbol for the LEDs, instead the flat side denotes negative. While placing the mini jacks, I missed the topmost holes for the legs, which do not line up with the rest of the holes for the mini jacks. The top two are offset diagonally. Before placing the switches, be sure to remove all of the nuts and washers, as they are not needed and will get in the way when placing the front panel. For each of these switches, there's a momentary side and a side where it stays. I need to figure out which side is which by testing them out, and make sure the momentary side faces left. There seems to be a notch on the momentary side. I thought that the final nut on each switch was part of the switch, but now I realize they need to be removed as well, so I end up removing all 4 of the switches that I placed. Here I'm showing the notched side versus the smooth side. The notched side is the momentary side. The smooth side is the side that stays. This may very well differ depending on where the switches were sourced from, so be sure to test yours out before placing them. For these 4 switches, the notches go left. Now I'm placing the front panel and screwing on the nuts to hold it in place. I start with soldering the LEDs so I can get their legs out of the way. I try my best to arrange the switches so that they'll serve as table legs for the module, but since I can only switch them to either right or center position, it doesn't work very well. I have to hold the module in place as best I can with my hands. I check each LED after soldering it to make sure it's still in its hole in the front panel. You'll see me drop the module a few times while holding it up to solder. This is definitely a build where a good set of helping hands would be useful. We connect the 2 panels and add the screws into the spacers. And finally, we do a continuity test on the power pins to make sure there isn't a short circuit. Here is the completed mutes module. Now to test it and make some tunes.